What if I told you that over $200,000 worth of rare LEGO sets vanished, leaving behind a trail of accusations, hidden records, and one very suspicious moving truck? Well, I decided to investigate the mystery myself, and what I discovered was far stranger than anyone expected. Let's get into it. When most people hear the word LEGO, they think about colorful bricks, childhood memories, and expensive sets collecting dust on a shelf. They usually don't think about investigations. They definitely don't think about missing property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that's exactly what happened when a massive Star Wars LEGO collection suddenly disappeared. The owner of the collection had spent years building it. Some of the sets were extremely rare. Others had been retired for years and were worth far more than their original retail price. Instead of selling everything himself, he made an agreement with a local LEGO store. The deal was simple. The store would display and sell the collection, and whenever something sold, the owner would receive his share of the money. Everything seemed normal. Customers were buying sets. Money was coming in. The collection was becoming one of the biggest attractions in the store. Then one day, everything changed. The store changed ownership. New management arrived. Old management left. And somewhere during that transition, a huge portion of the collection seemed to vanish. Almost immediately, people began pointing fingers. Some blamed the former owners, others blamed the new owners. A few people even suggested that thieves had somehow stolen everything. The problem was that every side had a different story, and every story seemed to contradict the others. The deeper I looked into the situation, the stranger it became. One group claimed that only a small amount of the collection was ever inside the store. Another group insisted that tens of thousands of dollars worth of LEGO sets were definitely there on the night everything changed. Both sides claimed they had proof. Both sides claimed the other side was lying, and both sides seemed completely convinced they were right. That was when I realized this wasn't just about missing LEGO, this was about finding out what actually happened. So I started where every good investigation starts: evidence, photos, documents, records, anything that could help rebuild the timeline. One of the first strange details involved a moving truck. Several people claimed that a large rental truck appeared around the time the store changed hands. At first, that might not sound important, but when you're trying to explain how thousands of LEGO sets disappeared, a truck big enough to carry them suddenly becomes very interesting. The weird part? Some witnesses said the truck was definitely there. Others insisted it never existed. The stories were completely opposite. So I began digging through photos taken during the ownership transfer. Pictures of shelves, pictures of inventory, even photos that accidentally captured parts of the parking lot. I wasn't looking for LEGO sets anymore. I was looking for one thing: proof. And what I found hidden in one of those photos would completely change the investigation. The moment I started comparing the evidence, one thing became obvious. Nobody could agree on what was actually inside the store on the night the ownership changed. Some people claimed there were only a few valuable LEGO sets left. Others insisted there were entire shelves filled with rare Star Wars sets worth tens of thousands of dollars. Those aren't small differences. That's the difference between a misunderstanding and a major mystery. To figure out who was telling the truth, I started examining photos taken before and after the handover. The earlier photos showed a store packed with inventory. Shelves were full. Display cases looked healthy. Rare sets seemed to be everywhere. Then I looked at photos taken during the ownership transfer. Suddenly, things looked very different. Several shelves appeared nearly empty. Entire sections looked like they had been cleared out. At first glance, it seemed like strong evidence that a huge amount of inventory had disappeared. Case closed, right? Not exactly. The former management had an explanation. According to them, many of the most valuable LEGO sets weren't left sitting on shelves overnight. Because of previous break-ins and security concerns, they claimed the expensive sets were regularly moved into locked storage when the store closed. If that was true, then empty shelves wouldn't necessarily prove anything. The sets could still be inside the building, just hidden away. That explanation sounded reasonable, but there was still a problem. Nobody could prove it. The new owners claimed they photographed everything they found inside the store. According to their records, only a small portion of the collection was present. The former owners argued that those photos didn't show the entire inventory.
Both sides believed their evidence was stronger, and that's when another strange detail surfaced: the inventory records. Now, inventory records should make things easier. Numbers don't have opinions. Numbers don't take sides. But somehow, these records created even more confusion. Different spreadsheets showed different values. Some sales appeared in one record, but not another. Certain LEGO sets were marked as sold. Others were listed as being on hold, and then there were the layaway purchases. For anyone unfamiliar, layaway allows customers to reserve an item and pay for it over time. Normally, a store might have a few layaway orders, but these records showed an unusually large amount. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of rare Lego sets appeared connected to layaway transactions. Some people believed this explained where a large portion of the collection had gone. Others argued the records were incomplete. The more documents I reviewed, the more difficult it became to separate facts from assumptions. Then I stumbled across another important clue: a second buyer. Months before the controversy exploded online, some of the collection had reportedly been sold through a separate arrangement. This wasn't through the store shelves. This was a direct sale involving another collector. Suddenly, a new possibility appeared. What if part of the missing collection wasn't missing at all? What if some of it had already been sold long before the ownership transfer happened? That theory started answering several questions, but it created a new one. If some of the Lego wasn't actually missing, then why were the numbers still so far apart? Even after accounting for documented sales, there was still a massive gap between what should have existed and what could actually be located. Somewhere in that gap was the answer, and the deeper I dug into financial records, sales history, and inventory logs, the closer I got to discovering what really happened to the so-called missing Lego fortune. At this point, I had spent days looking through photos, spreadsheets, sales records, and interviews. And the biggest surprise, the original story wasn't completely true. For months, people had repeated the same headline: a $200,000 Lego collection had disappeared. But when I started comparing inventory lists with actual records, the numbers told a different story. The collection was incredibly valuable, but it wasn't worth $200,000 anymore. That figure had been based on rough estimates made long before anyone carefully reviewed the inventory. When the actual records were analyzed, the value appeared significantly lower, still expensive, still a major loss, but nowhere near the giant number that had spread across the internet. That discovery changed everything, because if the starting number was wrong, then the amount supposedly missing was also wrong. Suddenly, the mystery became less about finding a giant stolen treasure and more about figuring out where every piece of the collection had gone. The deeper I looked, the more it felt like multiple people were trying to solve a puzzle, while each person only had half the pieces. Then came the biggest realization of the entire investigation. The mystery wasn't really about a truck, it wasn't really about hidden storage rooms, and it wasn't even about who controlled the store during the ownership transfer. The real problem was information. Everyone involved was working from different versions of the story. One side believed huge amounts of inventory had vanished. Another side believed most of it had already been sold, moved, or accounted for. Because nobody trusted the other side's records, every disagreement grew larger and larger. What started as a business dispute eventually turned into accusations, investigations, legal threats, and internet drama. And the irony is that the evidence suggested the truth was sitting somewhere in the middle. Were there still unanswered questions? Absolutely. Were there still items that couldn't be fully tracked? Yes. But by the time all the records were compared, the amount that couldn't be explained was far smaller than people originally believed. The famous $200,000 missing Lego collection wasn't exactly missing. A large portion had simply been hidden behind bad communication, incomplete records, and months of conflicting claims. In the end, the case taught me something important. The internet loves mysteries, but sometimes the truth isn't a dramatic heist. Sometimes it's paperwork, sometimes it's confusion, and sometimes the thing everyone is searching for has been sitting in the records the entire time. As for the missing Lego, the more evidence I uncovered, the clearer the picture became. And while I may not have found every single brick, I did find something even more valuable: the truth behind one of the internet's strangest Lego mysteries.